I had a marriage, and I was at that point where I was hopeless, helpless, desperate, and suicidal.
Your future is a blank page that you get to write, and don't let the past version of yourself ruin what that could be. No hole is too deep. You can get out, and there's people that can help you. There's people like Rob, there's people like me who will help you to find the right place for you. So please don't make a permanent decision based on these temporary things that are going on in your life. Hey everybody, thank you so much for joining this week of the Inspire Sessions. I'm your host, Ben Fisher, and I'm so thankful that you're here. If you love podcasts like Diary of a CEO or the Mel Robbins Podcast, you're going to love it here. So again, thank you so much. Make sure that you like, subscribe, share, get this out there to as many people as you can so they can get an inspiring message of hope. If you want to learn more about me and stay up to date with new episodes, visit benfisherinspires.com. With that being said, let's have a few words from our sponsors.
When addiction takes hold, finding the right help is so crucial. Better Addiction Care collaborates with the best treatment centers across the nation to provide personalized solutions that fit your needs and your insurance. Their team's available around the clock to guide you through the process. Visit their website at betteraddictioncare.com. Help is so much closer than you think. Let's get started. Most SEO agencies follow trends, but Brand North stays ahead of them. As search engines evolve and AI changes the way people find businesses, staying visible is tougher than ever. But Brand North helps businesses to cut through the noise with ethical, strategic SEO that works long term. But Brand North only takes on a few clients per quarter, so make sure you act fast. Visit brandnorth.com before that window closes.
All right, now let's get into it. This week we have a wonderful guest from New Jersey. His name's Rob Sackowitz, and we're going to talk a little bit about gambling addiction. We're going to talk about addiction overall as a whole, but I really want to focus in on gambling addiction. Rob is an amazing guy who owns a treatment center there in New Jersey, and I'm just blessed to have him on the podcast today. So let's get into it. The man, the myth, the legend, Rob.
There he is.
Good to see you, man.
Good to see you.
So glad you're here, man. I don't want to speak too much for you about who you are, but I do want to just mention right off the bat that we do work together. I work for a company called Brand North, you see here with the hat, and Rob is a client of Brand North, and just wanted to give a shout out to Brand North right off the rip there. And I've just enjoyed getting to know you, man. You're one of my favorite people in general. I don't want to say favorite client because we have a bunch of amazing people we work with, but you are a shining light in this world, and I'm just blessed to have you on here. I'm blessed to be able to have this time to get to know you a little bit better. I really just want to start out by learning a little bit more about you, Rob. I know that you own a treatment center in New Jersey, obviously, but I'd like to know a little bit about your story, man. Like, where do you come from? What got you into the field of addiction treatment and, especially with gambling addiction treatment? So tell me a little bit about who you are, man.
Well, first of all, I want to give a shout out to Brand North also. They've been an amazing partner to work with, help build our social media presence, our Google following, our website, and I'm a huge fan of yours too. I watch your videos. I think the world of you, and very grateful that you're taking the time to have me on this podcast.
Pleasure is all mine, man. Thank you.
My story is very similar to a lot of people. We grew up in a beautiful household, loving mom and dad, and the gambling started very innocently. I was 13 years old and I went to the racetrack with my dad. And, it was kind of like love at first sight. For me, it was just innocent, spending the day with my father and watching the horses run around the track. And the first bet I ever made, I won. And I couldn't wait to do it again next week and the week after. And it was not just the time spent with my dad and the bonding experience, but the feeling that I actually got from watching that horse finish first. It was like that dopamine hit immediately, or the feeling of being on a roller coaster that you didn't want to end. And, it started that way innocently. And then, I met some kids in school that were, partaking in the football tickets. And, we would all kind of get together and, ask ourselves, who we like for that Sunday. And, the bets were very small and innocent, $5 a game, $10 a game, nothing too crazy. But just like any disease of addiction, it progressed pretty quickly. And by the time I was 16 years old, I was in my first Gamblers Anonymous meeting already because I couldn't pay the kids at school that I owed money. So, I would sell some of my memorabilia that I had. I was giving them baseball cards. I gave some kids some of the jewelry that I accumulated, as a kid growing up, just to be able to, pay my gambling debts.
You say you were 16 years old already in your first meeting. And these friends of yours, I'm curious, were they friends or were these people that you were scared of when this was going on?
They were friends. However, I was scared to be able to not pay them and what that consequence felt like or looked like, from a school standpoint.
Yeah.
When you owe kids money and you see them every day at school, that's not a good feeling.
No, not at all. And then they could gang up on you. There's one other thing I want to touch on before you move on with your story. You mentioned like the first race, your dad brought you to the racetrack. You won that first race and it was the dopamine hit that you got. And I feel like that's what captures a lot of addicts. I know it was me. It was that rush of dopamine that I got with that first sip of alcohol. It was no pun intended, off to the races for me with that first sip. And it's interesting. I'm curious, does your dad have any history of an issue with gambling when you were growing up? Did you witness that? Did he have an issue, or was it just kind of like a fun thing for him?
It was more of a fun thing for him. He was able to bet a couple bowl games here and there, or go to the track. And maybe at times he would gamble a little bit more than he should, but he never crossed that invisible line. He was always able to turn it on and turn it off and look more as recreational versus, me crossing that line and having to chase those losses and kind of you get sucked into that trap of just having to continue to gamble because unlike a drug addict or an alcoholic, gambling, the only way out for a lot of gamblers is to continue to gamble because of the money aspect of it. A drug addict will continue to use drugs and then eventually pass out or sleep or wear out or detox or take time off. A gambler is constantly worried about money.
Yeah. Now tell me this, you mentioned substance abuse. Is that part of your story as well? Remind me about that. And if it is, was that starting at this early age in life too, or did that come later?
No, it came pretty early on also because once you start losing money, you look for other ways to escape and deal with the depression or deal with the anxiety. And, my parents were going through an ugly divorce and that caused a little bit of uncertainty in my life and affected my self-esteem quite a bit and my grades in school. So I remember being drunk at 14 or 15 and the same thing, getting that warm feeling inside and saying, wow, I could drown out the noise around me and I could just escape for a few hours. A lot of this for me was running from my reality. And my reality was that I wasn't comfortable in my own skin and I didn't have tools or resources or abilities to deal with life on life's terms the right way.
A lot of people, when they talk about addiction and people who suffer from addiction, they attribute it to trauma. And, I heard you mention that you had a great childhood and your dad seems like a wonderful guy. And I have a very similar experience. My parents were great. I can't think of any trauma really in my life. Obviously, we had some moments where things were tense and not so great because I was a kid that was acting a fool. But my childhood was good. So what do you say to people who say that addiction is always caused by trauma or it's always attributed to some kind of trauma? How do you talk around that, I guess, with us, with our stories being so similar of having good families and not really seeing that? And maybe you do have trauma. Again, I don't want to speak for you. I know we've only gotten into a little bit of your story so far, but tell me what you think about the whole trauma aspect.
Well, I did go through some traumatic experiences as a kid. It just wasn't until a little later on. And what I tell people generally, we become compulsive gamblers of one of three reasons, or if not all three. One, it'll start with self-esteem. If we don't feel good about ourselves, that restless, irritable, discontent feeling, not being able to look in the mirror and feel good about who you are, what you are, where you're going. Secondly, you could be predisposed genetically. Maybe mom's not an alcoholic. Maybe dad's not a compulsive gambler, but yet they're obsessive compulsive. Maybe they binge shop, or maybe they binge eat. That gene could get passed down from generation, or they may even skip a generation. Maybe it's grandpa that played the slots too much in Atlantic City, or had a couple too many to drink, so to speak, on a Friday night. And the third reason is traumatic experiences, Ben. People go through things in life and they don't want to deal with reality. They look to escape. And, when my parents divorced, that was extremely traumatic for me. I was abused, and I had a lot of bad stuff that went on from 16 to 17 after going in my first Gamblers Anonymous meeting that just exacerbated the disease of addiction for me.
Yeah, I love that. So move through your story a little bit. Like, let's progress. Unless, like, at that point, were you kind of through it, or did this progress and get even worse from that point?
Oh, it progressed and got way worse. Because
take me to rock bottom. Lead me from where you're at now in your story and get me all the way to rock bottom, because then I want to spend the rest of the time talking about hopeful stuff. I don't want to spend too much time talking about the nitty gritty, but I do want people to understand where it got and how bad it got.
All right. So I joined the military when I was like 18, thinking it was people, places, and things, and if I just got a fresh start to go somewhere else, that would be okay. They threw me in the middle of Louisiana, where they had riverboat casinos everywhere and racetracks everywhere in Louisiana. So I ended up getting kicked out of the military for financial irresponsibility and underage drinking. I was arrested 9 times. I ended up with 2 DWIs. I would move around a lot and, couldn't stay in a relationship, overdrawn checking accounts, owed a lot of people a lot of money, and, met my wife and thought that, meeting her would be like a fresh start, new girl, new opportunity to fix myself. And, I constantly would stay sober for a little bit and then relapse. And then the gambling led to the drinking led to the drug use, and then the drug use just escalated and progressed. So it started with pot. The pot led to coke. The coke led to crack. The crack led to heroin. And it led me at a point where I was 35 years old, getting kicked out of a family business, facing 5 years in jail with no stipulation because of an embezzlement scheme I came up with. I had a wife that was leaving our marriage, and I was at that point where I was hopeless, helpless, desperate, and suicidal.
So what was the actual, and maybe all of that combined is the rock bottom, but was there like a moment where it was like clear, like, all right, now it's time to change? And what was that moment? And then obviously you're a different person today, right? So what sparked that change in you? What was that rock bottom moment?
I remember pacing back and forth in my apartment when I was 35 years old, and my wife wasn't home. And my dad called me on the phone and said, "Get help, don't get help, I don't care. Give me back the keys to the shoe store. I'm done with you." And my wife was like, "If you don't get help, I'm leaving." And that was that like rock bottom aha moment. Like, I knew if I kept gambling, drinking, and doing drugs, I knew what I was going to get. But I didn't know what would happen if I stopped and got sober. And I decided, through working with a counselor at the time, to trust his suggestion, which was to go away to rehab, to a place called Serenity Springs in Edgewater, Florida. It was a fairly new facility back in 2012 and 2013. And I said, all right, I'll take a shot. I got nothing else to lose, Ben. At that point, I owed $750,000 to 15 different people that wanted to kill me, facing 5 years in jail with no stipulation and not many friends left. And kind of just jumped on this airplane with like a hope that I could somehow fix this, or I'll have, a hope that somehow they'll give me one more chance to make all this right. And when I went down there, I remember them telling me, "You only have to change one thing." And I was like, "That's great. I'll do it right now. What do we got to do?" And they said, "Everything." And that deflated me, and I was like, oh my God.
That's the best.
they started by telling me, I don't care who you are or what you have to take responsibility for this. This is a disease. And if you had cancer, you would go to every doctor and you would take every chemo and radiation treatment and you'd watch what you ate and you would do everything to fight for your life to get healthy. Why wouldn't you do that for your own self now, even though that this is an addiction? And that made sense to me. So I started by taking my inventory. Was I resentful? Do I owe somebody an apology? Was I dishonest? Was I full of fear? What did I pack into the stream of life? And little by little, each day, being out of the environment that I was in and being able to really work on myself, I started not only stacking days sober, but I started feeling better about myself. And all that pain that I had in me for 20 plus years, I was starting to process. And I was starting to realize that the divorce wasn't my fault, that me growing up the way I did was not my fault. My thoughts that I get on a day-to-day basis are not my fault. However, the actions after that thought are my fault, and I need to own that. And I didn't know what it was like to really take responsibility because I used to blame everybody else, and built up that self-esteem. And I realized that not only was I powerless over this and my life was unmanageable, but the true freedom in recovery was that I had to accept it, that I'm not missing out on anything, Ben, that I drank every kind of alcohol beverage there was. I did all the drugs. I gambled every which way. And I had to totally surrender to this thing and then build a life around me not gambling, drinking, or doing drugs. And I didn't know what that looked like. And I know that's scary for a lot of our clients, for a lot of people new in recovery, but I encourage them to look at it the other way. It could be the most exciting, most beautiful thing in the world. It's like you're getting a second chance at life. And I embraced it. And, I had a big aha moment when I was doing my third step. I got on my knees and I recited the third step prayer. And all of a sudden it started raining. And then seconds later, the sun came out. And it was like I felt this warm, undescribable feeling come over me that something said to me that I forgive you and you're going to be okay as long as you don't drink, gamble, or do drugs ever again. And I'll never forget that feeling because for the first time after I got up off my knees reciting that prayer, I felt even.
Wow.
Like I instantly was able to see the world through a different set of eyes. And that's what I was really chasing my whole life. To be able to feel comfortable in my own skin.
Yeah, that was an awakening. There's a name for that in the big book, and I'm blanking on what they call that. Yeah, it's spiritual awakening, right?
Yep.
Is that the term they use in the big book?
That's what they say. It's a spiritual awakening.
That's amazing, man. You're such an inspiration. When I talk to anybody in recovery, I think of this quote from Jelly Roll, and it's something along the lines of, I've never met an addict who didn't light up a room sober. And I just, hearing you talk like that, for some reason, that quote was sticking out to me, man, because you just light up the room. And just to think of where you've been, the darkness that you've seen and that you've lived through, but the amount of people that you've helped, man, and this is going to be a great segue into just talking a little bit about treatment of addiction, and we can talk about your center, Right Choice Recovery, a little bit. Before we do that, though, I have one question, because you mentioned amends, making amends to people, but you also mentioned that you owed, what was it, $1.3 million?
$750,000. $750,000.
Okay, so you owed $750,000 to people. Were you able to make amends to those people? Were you able to pay those people?
In 7 years.
7 years. Oh, my gosh.
Most people buy a house, are in that price range, and you get a mortgage for 30. So I've been extremely blessed and very grateful. A lot of people say, Rob, you should be proud. And it's not a pride thing, Ben. It's a gratitude thing. I've been very fortunate and blessed. And, I thank God, higher power, the programs, my sponsor, a lot of the men and women that have come before me to show me how to do it. Because some of the strongest pieces of advice or suggestions that I got early on was to ask for help. And I don't know, and I need help. And there's so much power in that to be able to not solve our own problems.
You are such a grateful dude, man. Every time I talk to you, it's always just, the conversation's always filled with gratitude, with thank you. And I'm so thankful for you guys and the work you do. And I'm a fan of yours. And it's just a blessing just to be in your presence and to be able to work with you. And I see that you live that, right? You're not just on this podcast saying that. Like, you live with that gratitude in your heart. I speak a lot about gratitude as well and just how powerful it is. It's hard to be pissed off when you're practicing gratitude. When you're going through the list of things that you're grateful for, it's hard to be a shithead. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So, thank you for being that person, man. I think that's really neat. I'd love to segue a little bit into, let's try and give some people some real tips on what they can do if they're struggling. But I do have a list of questions. Maybe I can just fire off some of these questions at you. You cool with that?
Sure, absolutely.
Cool. So many people don't see gambling addiction the same way they do substance addiction. How do you explain to others that gambling addiction can be just as destructive?
Because they can't see it, Ben. That's the biggest difference between substance abuse or alcohol and gambling. You don't know whether or not I just placed a bet in, but you could identify with the same feelings. If you can't trust your loved one, if there's no accountability, if there's missing money, if they're being caught in lies and everything else, it's the same tornado like they talk about in the big book, ripping and roaring through people's lives. You just can't see it. So don't discriminate. Don't have that stigma. Why can't you just stop? Their brain is wired differently. You wouldn't say that to an alcoholic. Don't talk that way about a compulsive gambler. They're not doing it to you on purpose. Their brain is wired differently. That obsession kicks off that allergy, and they go on sprees and binges. Just like a drug addict, just like an alcoholic, just like an overeater. Oh, have a little compassion. Don't stereotype a gambler just because you can't see the disease.
Yeah, I love that. Don't stereotype. So what are some common misconceptions about gambling addiction that you wish more people understood?
Well, the first one is that they can't, why can't you just stop? Because it's progressive in its nature. It's always going to get worse. It never gets better. So that's a big piece of it. The second piece of it is that, there's no real harm in it because they're doing it recreational. But if you look at the statistics, there are more compulsive gamblers that'll commit suicide than alcoholics and drug addicts combined.
Really?
Because they create these apparently insolvable problems. And they actually become compulsive liars, where they lie to themselves first and then lie to the world around them.
Do you have actual numbers memorized on that?
I don't have the exact statistic. Shouldn't be too hard to look up and find.
Yeah, I'll look it up and I'll flash it on the screen. That's very interesting. I didn't know that. What do you say to somebody who's maybe going through that and they're at that point where it makes more sense in their brain for them to just end it all rather than keep going? What would you say to them to help?
Don't give up. Go to a Gamblers Anonymous meeting, call 1-800-GAMBLER, come check us out, rightchoicerecoverynj.com. Call us. You don't have to do this alone. I just got done telling you there's a lot of power and a lot of strength in I don't know and I need help. And there's thousands of people that are going through this. And Ben, it's only going to get worse. I mean, they legalized gambling, I think, in almost 30 states now, and they're going to continue to do it because of the revenue. And it's like somebody walking around with their phone with a needle for a heroin addict. They're self-destructing every single day. Our phones are ringing like crazy because of the gambling.
I feel the same way about alcohol. Alcohol is what brought me to my knees, and it's everywhere. There's ads for it everywhere. It's at every gathering you go to. It's at every convenience store that you walk into, and it's accepted by people. So it wouldn't even be weird for me to go pick up a 12-pack. I wouldn't feel weird buying it. So I can understand that triggering aspect of it, just being everywhere, and it's becoming more normal. And there's people that can go and they can gamble and they can stop whenever, and you see those people and it's like, why can't I be like that person? I want to step back just a minute and talk to that person too, who might be thinking, shit, I am in too deep and there's nowhere for me to go. So why don't I just end it? And with what Rob said, I just want to piggyback on that. And I want to use his story to help you think through that. He got clean and sober from drugs and alcohol and gambling. And he was able to make amends to people. That number of $750,000, I know if I had that hanging over my head, I would be scared to death and think there's probably no way out of this. But there is a way out, and no hole is too deep. No hole is too deep. You can get out, and there's people that can help you. There's people like Rob. There's people like me who will help you to find the right place for you. So please don't make a permanent decision based on these temporary things that are going on in your life. Don't do it. The world needs you. And with the comment that I said earlier from the Jelly Roll quote that, never met an addict that doesn't light up a room sober, you can be that person, and you will be that person. The things you've gone through have just made you a stronger individual. So please don't give up, and don't give up hope.
And that leads me back to, that rehab. I told you about that third step prayer and how I felt. But going through the fourth step and dealing with all my resentments and my fears and everything that I had to unravel and learn about myself and everything that went on and how this disease affected my pride, my self-esteem, my ambition, my security, personal relationships, sexual relationship, and money. And realizing my character defects, in step 5 and 6 and continuing to work with them and share with other people and to make those amends. People said, how the heck did you pay this off? When you stop gambling, your financial income automatically improves, right? And then we get taught how to live on a budget. So in the beginning, it was hard. I mean, my wife and I, we would order a pizza once a week as our entertainment. We would go for walks. We would play tennis because whatever we had to do had to be inexpensive, and how to learn how to live life sober and in recovery, still owing all this money. But little by little, amazing things did start to happen, Ben. I got a raise at work, and, I went to one person that I owed money, and he said to me, you know what? I think you're clean now, 2 years or whatever it was, 2.5 years. He said, I'll erase the debt, but I need you to help my son. And I literally took his son to meetings and helped him get a sponsor and got him clean. And then I said to him, all right, you sure? I'll continue to keep making payment arrangements. And he said, Rob, I can never put a price tag on you helping my son. Thank you so much.
Beautiful story.
Little by little, I started to see that number go down and down and down. And I'll never forget when I finally got to a point where I was able to make my last payment. And I said to my wife, oh my God, this is unbelievable to have that balance at zero and not have the weight of the world hanging over my shoulders, and then really be able to continue to save and live within my means and yet still do nice things. And I know you alluded to the gratitude. The thing that I heard that I love most about just the word gratitude is that it makes everything you have enough. And I would have settled for a lot less than this, Ben. They told me, you're going to have a life beyond your wildest imagination. In the beginning, I thought that just meant freedom, not just relief from drugs, alcohol, and gambling, but actual freedom where I could go anywhere. I could be amongst friends or family, and the obsession will be removed, and I could be free. I could be Rob Sackowitz in my own skin and be happy without drinking, gambling, and doing drugs. And for me, that was 99% of that life beyond my wildest imagination. But what added to it was when we were able to open Right Choice Recovery in September of 2022. That made it 100%, because the feeling of, okay, let me get sober and do this for me first, then maybe I could actually be an inspiration to others. That is kind of what solidified everything.
Yeah. I want to talk more about Right Choice Recovery and talk about the program there and what your life looks like around that. But you've mentioned your wife several times, and I want to make sure that we talk about her earlier on here in this podcast. So it sounds like she was with you through most of this. Was she with you through most of it? And what was her role in that? And what's her role now? Just kind of tell me about her. I know you have a lot to say there.
She is amazing. I never met a woman like my wife. I put her through hell when I was using, and she had to make excuses, and she justified my behavior. She didn't know sometimes the difference between loving me and setting a boundary and enabling me because she didn't want me to feel any pain or be uncomfortable. But she got stronger by going to Al-Anon and Gam-Anon, and eventually learned how to set boundaries with me while I was actively using. And when I got home from rehab, we went to church one day, and I'll never forget, somebody came up to us after as we were leaving and said, Rob, Sandra, you have the ability to possibly one day be a power couple, that God may use you to be an example. And we didn't really know what that meant back then. We do know what that means now. That everything I have gone through took on a whole new meaning, and her also. And our experience can help benefit others. I saw a good quote not too long ago that said, your experience could be somebody else's survival kit to live a new life. And I love that because we've enhanced our marriage. We went to couples counseling in the beginning. We learned how to be parent together, because, I have 2 boys now. I'm in recovery over 12 years that never saw me drunk or high or in action. So we parent together. We installed a lot of family values together. We had to learn a whole new life in recovery. The percentage wasn't very good of us, staying together, making a beautiful life for ourselves. There was no guarantee on that.
Yeah.
So I have the utmost respect and trust. And, they say you always need one person in your foxhole when the world's coming crashing down. I would say I'd either want my wife or my sponsor in there. Absolutely.
Love that, man. And again, we have a similar story in that. And my wife, she stuck by me through it all. For many years, she didn't even know that I was struggling. But then as it progressed and it got worse, things got really bad. And there were several years there where she was hanging on by a thread and trying to love me the best way she can. And, there was this stage of enabling because she didn't want to see me in pain. And then that slowly shifted into the phase of tough love where, okay, now I got to set some boundaries because I don't want to live this way. And she's an incredibly strong woman. Your wife and my wife would probably be good friends if they met. And we had a chance in Florida a couple weeks ago, man, and we missed it. So I'm sorry about that. But we'll catch you next time. But they would get along for sure, and they would have things to talk about, I'm sure. But it's really cool to hear that and be able to know that we relate on that level, that we have some badass chicks by our side, man.
We have the best. Someone once said to me, I did this speaking thing and I gave her some accolades and I said, I love my wife more than anything else in this world. And there was a question that came up and it said, I find that strange. You have 2 kids. How do you put your wife's love before your own children? And I said, for me, and the way I understand this is that I love a lot of things, right? I'm so selfish and self-centered in nature, naturally, that I love the Yankees. I love veal parmesan. I love to play golf. I love shopping. My wife actually taught me what it's like to be in love, to put somebody else's needs before my own. So how does my gratitude and love not start with my wife first and then my kids? She's the one who taught me that because we're growing up. I didn't know what it was like. I didn't have all that. That's why I say that so respectively highly of my wife, because she taught me how to do that.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. There's another thing that's attached to you, a term, living the dream. And it's the name of one of your sober living homes that you have there. And it's named after just something that you say on a regular basis, or you've said over the years, living the dream. And you've talked a little bit today about living that dream and getting to the point where, out of the big book, they say you're going to live a life you never dreamt of. Tell me a little bit about that. What is life like today, and what makes it the dream?
I don't even know where to start. I mean, I always wanted to be happy, joyous, and free growing up as a kid. And today when I wake up, I do my readings, I do my prayers, I talk to people in a program or people that I sponsor. I drive to work, I listen to good music, I leave the house, I get my kids on the bus, come into the office, I check in with all our clients, see how they're doing, if they're going to meetings or how they're doing in therapy and groups and what steps they may be working on. I could play golf, I go out for dinner, or my wife will make a beautiful dinner at night. We'll sit around with the kids, I'll help do homework, I get them on the bus, the kids are off the bus. And I go to a meeting myself. My life is full. And so for me, living the dream, really relates back to that time when I was 13, 14 years old, where all I wanted to do was be happy, joyous, and free. And today, if I reflect on what my day is like, there's that happiness, and I'm joyous, and I'm free from addiction, and I'm free from the trauma and the drama and the disappointments and the nightmares and all the crap that I lived through. That's what living the dream is, that I don't have to look over my shoulder, that I don't have any secrets out there anymore, that I don't have to worry about something that's going to happen because I did something wrong. Oh, that's the freedom that we talk about in the big book also.
Yeah, I love that. So nothing too extravagant, nothing too crazy. It really it comes down to the gratitude thing. Living the dream is really just being grateful for what you have.
It's so full.
Yeah.
If you look at, what I like to do and, what people want to do in their life, the balance between work, family, and fun, I'm a very lucky guy. I'm very blessed.
Yeah, you are, man. Yeah, you are. It's amazing.
I always go back here, and I want this to be a snippet. If you could cut this or show this, to me, this, and I'm curious to know what your thought is on it. If I truly got what I deserved, I'd be in jail or I'd be dead. So I believe that I was spared that to be able to give back and help others.
Yeah.
And what's your thoughts on your life and what you've been through as far as that's concerned?
100%, and it's always a struggle mentally, though, to think like I'm stronger and I'm a better person because of the things I went through. I want to be able to be the person that says I don't have any regrets, but damn, I wish I could go back and change some things that I did. But it's kind of a conundrum, right? Because the things I went through, the things I did, led me down to the path to where I am today. You see the social media pages and the podcast and all this, and the amount of people that I'm reaching on a regular basis and hopefully helping on a regular basis. I don't think I would be this person if it wasn't for the things I went through and the things I did. So it's that conundrum for me, the back and forth. I wouldn't take anything back, but if I could go back, man, I'd probably do things a little bit different, right? But now that I'm here and I'm living it, it's clear that there was purpose and there was meaning, because I think the same thing. Like, if I didn't have my wife, if I didn't have my family and the people that love me and care about me and helped me through this, I would probably be dead too. And I wouldn't have been able to be this person. And that's just a big thing that I really try to portray to people and push on them. Like, it doesn't matter where you're at now. It doesn't matter what you've done. It doesn't matter what's happened in the past. Your future can be completely different. Your future is a blank page that you get to write, and don't let the past version of yourself ruin what that could be. And knowing that now too, it's like life still gets hard sometimes, and I go through some shit just like anybody and everybody, but I know that the future is that blank page and I can change things up in any minute, right? And that's the beauty of it. Just don't give up is what it comes down to. Don't give up.
And we also have way more tools and resources when we do go through life on life's terms and it's hard, or there's questions, or fear creeps in, or doubt, or you start with an insecurity and second guessing yourself. We all have friends and sponsors and networks and people that care about us, so we don't have to self-sabotage anymore. We could say, hey, I'm having a rough day, or, I don't feel good about myself, and to be vulnerable, right? Because when we normally, back then when we were using, what would we do? We just numb those noises. I can't tell anybody what's going on. I just have to solve my problem. And We try to emphasize that a lot at Right Choice Recovery, that the brain that got you into treatment cannot be the same brain that gets you out of treatment. This all starts up there. So we have to change the way we think so we could change the way we act, and then we could change the way we react. And, that future, that page that you're talking about is beautiful. I mean, at 47 years old, I just learned something about myself that I never knew. I love to do Legos, Ben. And, that little 16-year-old kid, that 20-year-old kid, that 30-year-old kid or version of Rob Sackowitz would literally roll my eyes at me now. And I'd have a half a splash more of a martini, betting a ball game, trying to be a big shot in some fancy restaurant. And yeah, Legos are for, people that don't even have a life. And yet at 47, I actually love doing them. It slows my mind down. It's something I can do with my kids. We could follow the directions. I see the gratifying feeling of accomplishing something from start to finish, and to take pride in it and care about it and want to complete it and do it well.
That's the ego, right? That's the deflation of the ego, and it's all the things that you've gone through. We have a lot of us in recovery. I wager to say all of us have had a humbling experience where it's like, all right, I'm not the big shot that I think I was. I don't have it all figured out. So that's definitely an ego thing. And I love Legos too, man. I can't tell you the last time I played with a Lego. I can tell you the last time I stepped on one. That wasn't a lot of fun. So tell me more. Let's talk about Right Choice Recovery, and let's talk about what you guys do there, how you treat people. We can talk about the substance use stuff. I do want to focus quite a bit on the gambling aspect of it, because I think that's a unique thing that you guys offer that I really want to make sure people are aware of. So what is a day for somebody who's coming to treatment for gambling addiction at Right Choice Recovery? And how do they even get there? Do they just call you? Like, how does that work? Give me the admission process, and then what's a day in the life of somebody going through rehab at Right Choice Recovery?
Well, they can find us online, rightchoicerecoverynj.com, or they could call us 732-908-2111. And we have an admissions team. We have somebody that helps with any of the insurance verification and cash pay situations or scholarships or through the grant and 1-800-GAMBLER. So I want to make that transparent and make sure that people understand that that's easy. It's not a major process. They could call and say, I need help. I'm struggling with a gambling problem. They'll come in. We'll do an assessment on them. We, for a long time, did a screening based upon the conditions of them financially as far as what they owe, the pressure that they may be receiving, if they have any anxiety or depression. We do a full assessment on that. And upon admitting into, Right Choice Recovery, we get them into specific groups. We run a partial care program, which is 9 to 2, Monday through Thursday. And on Friday, it's 9 to 12. We also have an IOP program that runs Monday through Friday, 9 to 12. And we also have evening hours from 6 to 9 at night. And the groups are based upon a specific gambling curriculum only. So they will not be mixed in with other substance abuse clients unless they have a dual diagnosis and a need for that. And what those groups entail are very similar to what they've experienced. Like today's group, it's all about anger. When they got angry, whether they were not gambling, when they were gambling, how it manifested itself. They go down into causes and conditions. They deal with resentments. They deal with some of their fears. We do EMDR to help put money in its proper place, to learn the value of a dollar. We help with self-exclusion. We run pressure relief group meetings, which will help them become financially responsible and live on a budget. We help them deal with their ego, self-esteem. It's pretty intensive. When they come out and they're immediately given a phone list. So there's people out there that can identify with what they're going through on a day-to-day situation. They'll have friends and people around them that have had the same kind of experiences or what they might have struggled with also. It's pretty neat. We're a family-owned and operated facility, so everybody is treated like a person. We'll customize a schedule for them. Certain people They want to come in the morning on Tuesday. They want to come on Thursday at night. We'll work with them to make sure that we could fit what they need from a therapeutics side into their schedule.
You may have mentioned this. Maybe I missed it. Are people able to come from out of state? Like you guys are in New Jersey. Are you able to take patients from all over the United States? And how does that work?
Well, if they have the ability to telehealth and do Zoom, we can take them, sure. Certain insurance policies cover telehealth, certain policies don't. In that situation, we could always work out some kind of financial arrangement, but they could hop on Zoom anytime. And again, we would do the same thing, Ben. Customize a schedule for them where send them the links and have them hop on, and they get individual therapy once a week also. They get to see the psychiatrist once a week. So we're going to put our arms around you and care about you till you're able to care about yourself.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit. Like, tell me, I want to help listeners that might be on the fence, may not know that they have a problem, or just maybe wondering if they do. Maybe they go out and they gamble a couple times a month and it's an issue, but it's not causing them to just completely spiral. How does somebody know that, like, it's time? Like, this is a problem and I need to get help for this? What are the signs?
Well, there's 20 questions that they ask in Gamblers Anonymous. And generally, they say 7 of those questions. If you answer at least 7 to them, that you may have a gambling problem. And I believe, just like you do, and I believe also that once you can only make that decision, could lose time from work or school due to gambling. You could think about doing illegal acts to finance your gambling. Gambling could cause a decrease in your ambition and efficiency. You could have thought about hurting yourself or self-destruction as a result of your gambling. You could have thought about committing illegal acts to finance your gambling. Arguments, disappointments, and frustration create you with an urge to gamble. And some of that doesn't have to be if you lost, a gazillion dollars. Some of that could be just life on life's terms, because it's all relative. The guy that lost, let's say, $10,000 could feel the same way that the guy that lost $100,000. You got to identify with the feelings and what they're going through. And only they can make that decision. If they gamble in a couple times a month, and yet if they're going on big binges and they're not home and they're not present and they're running out from work and the wife's looking for them or something else is going on, the consequences will dictate the kind of pain that they're in. So if they're able to manage it, by all means, manage it. Be responsible, set aside X amount of dollars that you can afford to lose each time you do gamble. But if you find yourself crossing that line and keep going and chasing your losses and can't wait to get back, and, the urge to return to win back your money is there, you may have a problem. You may want to look at that.
How often do you see co-occurring issues where, somebody has a gambling issue, but they also have a substance use or an alcohol issue, and vice versa? Like, I know for me, I struggled big time with drugs and alcohol, but when I would go to the casino, like, I could stop. I could spend $20 and be done, even if I won. That was never something that affected me, but I assume it's probably a pretty high ratio of people where it's just you hear it said that they have a addictive personality, right? And I'm sure that hits all kinds of aspects, whether it's a behavioral addiction or substance use, a substance addiction. In your experience at Right Choice Recovery and just in your life in general, is it more common for people that are coming to you with gambling addiction issues that they also suffer with substance abuse, or what do you see in there?
I would say we get a good mix, 50-50. Certain gamblers are just, gambling is their only problem. They could drink occasionally on the weekends, never really have any of the consequences that come with, quote unquote, having an alcohol problem or being an alcoholic. And then we run into, on the other side of the 50-50, I get people that stop drinking and that are in AA and stop doing drugs and then all of a sudden become addicted to gambling. So we see a good mix. It's 50-50. It just depends upon that feeling, that urge. Maybe it is that personality or that predisposed genetic, obsession of the mind. We do right now have a lot of gamblers in there that their primary addiction is gambling, and they don't have the substance abuse piece with it.
Yeah. It's just interesting to me because I consider myself to have an addictive personality. And even after getting clean and getting sober, I still find myself getting caught up in something, whether it's jelly-filled donuts in the morning for however long or whatever it is. And I wrote this little workbook. You can see it back here somewhere. Yeah, right there. And there's a section in the book where I talk about healthy addictions and finding your healthy addictions, because for some reason, whatever reason, I have to keep my brain occupied and find something to do, to get lost in. And it's been different things over the years. Finding that healthy addiction. One thing, I learned how to build guitars, and I was obsessed and addicted with building these guitars. Is there any truth to that, or do you have any experience with that? Because I believe that's one thing that really helped me is like, okay, I'm going to be addicted to something. Let me shift it to a healthy addiction. Do you think that's a healthy thing for me to promote or for me to say? What do you think about that?
I think it's good that you could identify that. I'm not a big fan of that. Personally, as far as me being quote unquote addicted to something else, I don't want anything else to give me the power over me. However, there are things that I like to do. I love to play golf. Again, I just shared, I love doing Legos. So I did one last week. Now I bought another one this week. Does that mean am I going to be quote unquote addicted to it? I don't know. For a while, it filters in different areas of my life. I go on a shopping spree. For a while, I was buying sneakers. Every single week, I buy a new pair of sneakers. Then, I filled that up a little bit. And then I went to 500-piece puzzles. So I did that a little bit, so I think it's all in balance in our life. Knowing that we have the capacity to get addicted, to things. We have to have the proper balance, because I can make organizing my closet, for an example, an addiction. So my wife's going to say, okay, honey, you got to go take the kids to baseball, or, they have flag football, or, we have to be at the school for something. And what am I going to do? Half my closet's totally apart. I'm going to then just say, no, you go without me, because that's kind of that powerlessness and unmanageability. So I think all of these things, and like building a guitar, I think that's a wonderful outlet. And you say addicted, you have to really ask yourself, and you said it nicely, and I don't know if you said it jokingly or not, but I highly doubt it. If your wife came to you and said, okay, the kids need to eat dinner, we have dinner time, this is going on, we got to take them to my in-laws or whatever it is. Does that mean you're not going to go take your kids because you're in the middle of a guitar? Do you have to finish that guitar right then and there?
Yeah.
I don't know you that well, Ben, but I would safely say, and maybe I'll be wrong, that you would put the guitar down and go help your family and your kids. But if that was alcohol, there's no way that you can't get in a car or go do anything without getting that feeling. Just like me, gambling, drinking, or doing drugs, I couldn't until my bets were in. Then once the bets were in, once I had that drink, once I smoked that joint or did the drugs, then I could do whatever was asked of me. But that had to be the priority.
It makes a lot of sense, and it's a good perspective for me to have. And maybe the wording is off in the book. Maybe it's a healthy obsession.
I like that. There you go.
You know what I mean? Because addiction does have that connotation to it that it's like your life is unmanageable when you're addicted to something. That's definitely not what I was trying to portray in that section. It's really just bringing awareness, like you mentioned, like it's good to be aware of that. Like finding something that you love to do is healthy, and it's good to dive all in on it and become somewhat obsessed with doing something healthy for yourself. But it's all about that balance. Like you said, it's being able to balance the rest of your life, because if something, no matter what it is, if it's making your life unmanageable, that's a problem. Obviously, you got to be able to manage your life and things going on around you. So that's a good perspective, man. I might have to get in there and make some tweaks to the book from that advice.
No, I'd be the first one to buy a copy or love a copy of that. So,
thanks, buddy. So we're coming up on an hour here. I typically like to end these, Rob, with just giving some words of encouragement and words of hope to our listeners, anybody out there who might be struggling with substance abuse, or they've dug themselves in a hole because of gambling and they don't see a way out. So I'd love for you to give me your best 60-second to 2-minute pitch to somebody who needs help. Let them know that they're not alone and that they can turn things around. So I give you the floor for you to close it out with a little bit of hope for us.
If you're watching this, if you're hearing this, or if you are clicking on it, we're here to help you. You're not alone. And you don't have to fight this whole world and this whole battle. It doesn't matter if it's gambling, if it's drinking, or if it's drugs. We can help you. We'll help you get to the causes and conditions of why you used to begin with. And we will give you tools and resources. We will put our arms around you and tell you that we care about you and help you become the person that you're supposed to be. There's plenty of help out there. Please give us a call, 732-908-2111, or check us out online. It's rightchoicerecoverynj.com, and give yourself that chance. If I could do it, if Ben can do it, you could do it too, because you deserve to be happy, joyous, and free.
Amen, man. Thank you so much. You are a shining light in whatever room you show up in, man. And I'm just, again, blessed to know you, and I'm blessed to have gotten to know you a little bit better today. I love to know more of your story. And yeah, this was a lot of fun. I can't thank you enough for doing this. And let's talk after this. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. We'll say goodbye to everybody. You hang on the line, Rob, if you don't mind. Love you guys. We'll see you next time.